Picture this, you're a key worker earning £30,000 a year. You've scrimped and saved for 5 years to build up £25,000 in your cash ISA. Maybe for a house deposit, maybe for a wedding, or maybe just for peace of mind that comes from having an emergency fund. You've done everything right, you've followed all of the financial advice, and you've used your tax-free allowance responsibly. Now imagine the Chancellor walking into your home and saying, "Tough luck, mate. I'm now going to take more of your hard-earned cash by reducing the cash ISA allowance going forward. Oh, and by the way, I'm doing this to help my wealthy investor friends to make more money on the stock market." Sound far-fetched? Well, that's exactly what's about to happen to millions of ordinary British savers, and barely anyone is talking about it. I'm talking about the biggest attack on middle-class savings since Gordon Brown raided pension funds back in 1997. First, let's dive into the story that mainstream media doesn't want you to understand. The speculation is that Reeves is planning to slash the amount you can save from a cash ISA from £20,000 to potentially down to £4,000 or £5,000 per year. But here's what she won't tell you. This isn't about helping you to get better returns. This is about forcing ordinary people to subsidise the failing stock market, while the government collects millions in extra tax revenue from your savings. Therefore, exposing individuals to either more tax or more risk. Neither is likely palatable for someone relying on cash for a major event. Personally, I lost £30,000 of my money buying a bad stock just before the wedding, and I can tell you, it hurts. Let me break down the numbers that will make your blood boil. Right now, 22.3 million Brits have ISAs, of which 14.4 million of them use cash ISAs exclusively. That's more than 1 in 4 adults across the entire country. These aren't just wealthy investors playing with monopoly money. In fact, 47% of cash ISA holders earn less than £20,000 a year. We're talking about NHS workers, carers, shop assistants, and young people saving for their first home. And here's the really insulting part. The government claims that this will boost the UK stock market, but their own research shows that only 1 in 4 people would actually invest that money into UK equities if cash ISAs were restricted. The other 75% will end up paying more tax on their cash savings elsewhere. Let me show you exactly how this plays out with a real example that demonstrates the human cost of these proposed changes. Meet Sarah, a dedicated NHS nurse in Manchester, earning £37,430 a year, the current UK median salary. After a difficult divorce that lasted 2 years, Sarah recently received a £20,000 cash settlement. As a single mother, she wanted to keep the money safe and accessible for her children's future and potential emergencies. Sarah represents thousands of people who, through no fault of their own, find themselves needing to rebuild their financial security after life-changing events. Now, Sarah has been a diligent saver throughout her career, already having £15,000 in regular savings accounts that she's built up after many years of careful budgeting on a nurse's salary. Under the current system, Sarah can put her entire £20,000 divorce settlement into a cash ISA, earning roughly 4.1% interest tax-free. Her financial position looks like this. Existing cash not in a cash ISA is £15,000, earning £615 in interest. The divorce settlement in a cash ISA is £20,000, earning £820 tax-free. The total interest earned between these two is £1,435, with zero tax paid, as her existing savings interest of £615 is well below the £1,000 personal savings allowance, giving her a net interest of £1,435. But under the proposed new rules, Sarah can only put perhaps £5,000 of her divorce settlement into a cash ISA. The remaining £15,000 must go into a regular savings account where the interest becomes taxable. In this example, existing savings not in a cash ISA is £15,000, earning £615 in interest. The divorce settlement is split as £5,000 into cash ISA earning £205 tax-free, and the rest of the divorce settlement into a regular savings account of £15,000, again earning £615 in taxable interest. This gives her a total taxable interest of £1,230, the £615 plus the £615. Her personal savings allowance is £1,000 as she's a basic rate taxpayer, giving her £230 that is subject to tax. Of this, she will pay 20% of £230, which equates to £46, giving her a net interest of £1,389 per year. The impact on Sarah is that Sarah loses £46 per year simply by receiving a divorce settlement and trying to save it responsibly. That's £46 less for her children's needs, school trips, or unexpected expenses that single parents face. It gets even worse if rates rise. If interest rates increase to 5% in the future, Sarah's tax burden jumps to around £100 per year. That's money that could have gone towards her children's education or family emergencies. This isn't just about numbers, it's about a hard-working NHS nurse being penalised for financial responsibility during one of the most challenging periods of her life. Sarah isn't a wealthy investor trying to game the system. She's someone who has served her community and is simply trying to secure her family's future with a one-time settlement from a difficult divorce. The proposed changes would force Sarah to choose between accepting a significant tax penalty on her careful savings or putting money she can't afford to lose into a volatile investment. For someone looking to rebuild their life after divorce, this added financial stress feels particularly unfair. The government will tell you that this policy is progressive and that it mainly affects wealthy people who can afford to invest. Unfortunately, that's a lie. And here are the demographics of people who actually use cash ISAs. These are overwhelmingly ordinary working people, where 47% of people earn less than £20,000 per year, and another 30% earn between £20,000 and £40,000. These aren't trust fund babies playing with daddy's money. These are people who work hard for a living and have managed to save despite wages barely keeping up with inflation. They're the people who followed the government's advice to save for a rainy day and are now being punished for it. And here's the truly cynical part. Higher earners will barely be affected because they're already sophisticated enough to use offshore accounts, investment wrappers, and other tax planning strategies. This policy specifically targets the financially unsophisticated, people who trusted the government's promise that ISAs would remain a safe, tax-free home for their money. The Chancellor will dress this up as being in your best interest. She'll say that cash returns are too low and that you need to invest for better returns, whilst also boosting the British economy. But don't buy it for a second. This is really about two things: tax revenue and propping up London's failing stock market. First, the tax grab. There's £300 billion sitting in cash ISAs across the UK. If a fraction of that gets forced into a taxable savings account, the Treasury will collect tens of millions in extra revenue without having to announce a single tax rise. It's the perfect stealth tax. They can claim that they're helping you whilst also picking your pocket. And second, the London Stock Exchange is in crisis. In 2024, 88 companies left the UK market, while only 18 joined. Major companies like Arm Holdings, Flutter Entertainment, and Ashton Group have moved their listings to the US, where they get better valuations. The UK stock market has unfortunately become an international laughingstock. So rather than fix the underlying problems, excessive regulation, poor corporate governance, and lack of entrepreneurial spirit, the government wants to force ordinary people into propping up the failing stock market with their hard-earned money. The government will show you charts proving that the stock market beats cash over the long term. And technically, they're not wrong. The average stocks and shares ISA returned 11.9% in 2024, compared to just 3.8% for cash ISAs. But here's what they won't tell you. Those returns come with massive volatility that most savers can't handle. Look at 2008, for example, where the stock investments fell 28% in a single year, while cash savers lost nothing. Or in 2020, when the stock market crashed 15% during the pandemic panic. If you're 25 years old and saving for retirement, perhaps you can ride out these crashes. But if you're 35 saving for a house deposit, or 45 with kids heading to university, or even 55 approaching retirement, you simply cannot afford to lose 20 to 30% of your savings in a stock market crash. And the government does know this. They know that most people forced out of cash ISAs won't actually invest, and they just end up paying more on tax held in cash accounts elsewhere. And that's exactly what they want. However, there is some good news. You are not defenseless. There are several perfectly legal ways that you can protect your savings from the cash grab, and I'm going to walk you through each one of them now. Now, strategy 1 is to maximize your personal savings allowance. Remember, you can still earn £1,000 in tax-free interest outside of an ISA if you're a basic rate taxpayer, or £500 if you're a higher rate taxpayer. At the current rates of 4.5%, that means you can hold around £22,000 in regular savings before paying any tax as a basic rate taxpayer. So if the cash ISA allowance does drop to £5,000, you could still put £5,000 into your cash ISA plus £22,000 in a high interest savings account, still paying zero tax. That's £27,000 in tax-free cash savings, more than most people have anyway. Strategy number 2 is the premium bonds loophole. And here is a clever one that most people miss. Premium bonds from NS and I are completely tax-free, and currently you can hold up to £50,000 in them. They're also paying an effective rate of 3.8% right now, which is better than most cash ISAs were paying just 2 years ago. Premium bonds aren't technically savings account. They're a lottery where you win tax-free prizes instead of earning taxable interest. As mentioned, the average return works out to be around 3.8%, but some people do win big, whilst others win nothing. Now, it's not for everyone, but it's a completely legal way to keep more of your money tax-free. Strategy number 3 is the spouse allowance split. If you're married or in a civil partnership, you can effectively double your tax-free savings by splitting them between both partners. Each of you gets your own personal savings allowance. So as a couple where both are basic rate taxpayers, they can earn £2,000 in interest tax-free outside of an ISA. With this said, a couple of basic rate taxpayers can still maintain around £140,000 in tax-free cash even after the proposed cash ISA cuts by utilising premium bonds up to £100,000, reduced cash ISA allowances of £10,000, and uninvested cash in stocks and shares ISAs of around £30,000. Now, combined with their personal savings allowance benefit and the assumed interest rate of 4.1%, their total tax efficient savings capacity could increase to around £189,780 before any tax liability arises. The key is adapting to hold cash within investment wrappers rather than traditional savings products. Now, strategy number 4 is the stocks and shares ISA cash fund hack. Here's the smartest move for all of you. You can hold cash-like investments inside a stocks and shares ISA that behave almost exactly like cash, but they count as investments. Money market funds and cash funds held in an investment ISA typically pay similar rates to cash ISAs, but with minimal risk. The Fidelity Cash Fund, for example, is currently yielding 4.96%, better than most cash ISAs. It can be held within a stocks and shares ISA, so it wouldn't be affected by any cash ISA restrictions, but it behaves almost exactly like cash with very low risk. Now, being completely honest, this is probably the government's worst nightmare. People using investment ISAs to hold cash-like assets, defeating the entire purpose of this policy while staying completely within the rules. Now, personally, I do this through Trading 212 as they offer commission-free trades. If you'd like to sign up and get a free fractional share worth up to £100, please feel free to use my sponsored code DEAN. Terms do apply though, so please read them carefully. Now, time is running out. If these changes are announced in July or potentially the autumn budget, they could come into effect as early as next tax year, in April 2026. Here is exactly what you need to do to protect yourself. So first we have immediate actions, say this week. First, you want to calculate your total cash savings. Add up everything you have between cash ISAs, regular savings and current accounts. Second, you want to map out your tax position. Figure out whether you're a basic, higher or additional rate taxpayer for planning purposes. And third, research high interest savings account. Find the best rates available outside of your cash ISAs to maximize your personal savings allowance. Now in the immediate term, say actions over the next 3 months. First, consider premium bonds. If you're comfortable with the variable returns, move some of your cash from regular savings to premium bonds for tax-free growth. Secondly, explore cash funds in stocks and shares ISAs. Research money market funds and cash funds that offer cash-like returns within an investment wrapper. Plan with your spouse. If you're married, coordinate your savings strategy to maximize both of your personal savings allowances. And finally, your long-term actions, say before April 2026. First, rebalance your savings. Move money between different tax-efficient vehicles based on the new financial rules. Second, consider genuine investments only if you have a genuine long-term goal and you can handle volatility. And third, stay informed. Follow the consultation process and the government's announcements. The bottom line is that it's your money and your choice. Let me be crystal clear what this is about. It's about the government deciding that your financial goals don't matter, that your need for safe, accessible savings is less important than propping up share prices for wealthy investors and for also generating more tax revenue. They're taking away your choice to keep your money safe and forcing you into a false binary. Accept higher taxes on cash or risk your money in a volatile investment that you might not fully understand. Please feel free to share this with your friends who need to know about this. And until next time, ta-ra.